What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the EPM Show. This is all things enterprise performance management, and we are here to give you an unfair career advantage. We have Brett Francis on the show today. He is a manager at Cervello and certified master Anaplanner. Before jumping into the Anaplan ecosystem, he had a really successful year in FP&A, and he shared a lot of really incredible insights around how to build a great foundation for an Anaplan customer in an engagement if you're a consultant. Not just about staying with the scope of work, but actually helping a customer build something that lasts. And also what it means to do the right thing for a client, even when no one is looking, and how great consultants actually elevate their career by making themselves replaceable. I'm really excited for you to hear that one. And then also why being too agile early on in a project is actually bad for finance transformation. I hope you enjoy this episode and all of the insights that Brett has to share. Check it out. Brett, how you doing?
Doing pretty good. Happy to be on the show.
Good, man. We are so pumped to have you. I will jump right in and hit you with our first question, which is give the audience your career flyover in 60 seconds or less. Tell us how you got to where you are today.
Sure. So 60 seconds or less, I started off with a degree in accounting from Quinnipiac. From there, I went to work in audit at Ernst& Young. And I think there's a few other folks on the podcast that have started off in audit or tax. Did that for about 3.5, 4 years, realized it wasn't what I wanted to do for a career. Then I went to go work in FP&A at a large aerospace company and did that for a couple of years and then heard about Anaplan through a friend. He said, "You're really involved with Excel modeling and loading up data into Hyperion and that type of stuff. So you might like Anaplan." Then I joined Cervello, which is a Anaplan partner out of Boston. And from there, been there about a little over 5 years now. Started off Anaplan model builder, moved up the ranks through solution architect and master Anaplanner. And yeah, now I'm designing solutions for clients and have been for the past 5 years.
That's awesome, man. You crushed it. Next question for you. I'm not even going to hit what you just said because I know we're going to dive a lot into it, kind of more deeper level as we get into the content of the show. But my next question for you is what is one place that you have been to you have absolutely no desire to ever go back to and why?
Hmm, that's a good question. I'd probably say Portsmouth, New Hampshire, which is a very nice place. But when I worked in audit, I would drive from Connecticut up to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, probably 75% of the year. So I've been there a little bit too much. I did that for probably like 2 years. I was going up there for most of the year. So it was a really nice spot, but I've definitely been there a little bit too much.
That's funny that you say that because I lived in Portland, Maine for 2
Oh,
years, which,
okay.
as you know,
Yep.
is like 45 minutes away. So we used to always not often, but we would consistently take trips down to Portsmouth because I thought it was a really nice place, but sounds like you can have a little bit too much of it. I can see you can only walk around the shops so much, so I get it, I guess, but yeah.
Exactly. It's a small mini version of Boston, so if you're there too much, you've been to all the restaurants, you've had all the different food, been to
Yep.
all the shops, and I'm usually up there during the cold months too, so
Yeah, that stinks. I think the only thing I didn't do up there that I wish I had done was take a boat out onto the river and get out, like, into the sound and all that stuff because I think that's brackish water up there, and it feeds into the ocean pretty quickly, right?
yeah, and there's actually a cool spot you can walk from New Hampshire to Maine over a bridge, so it's kind of a cool factoid there. You can walk over that bridge and then go right into Maine.
Oh, I didn't know that. See? So, as most of my time was spent in Portland, but yeah, love the New England area, but it's only nice a few months out of the year. No, for sure, man. Well, hey, thanks for sharing that. Definitely an interesting answer. So, one of the things, Brett, that I know you're super passionate about when it comes to just Anaplan and EPM transformation is setting the right foundation to create long-term solutions. So can you maybe just talk a little bit of what it looks like to lay a good foundation when you're approaching an Anaplan implementation and how you try to set clients up for long-term success?
Yeah, definitely. So this is an area that I've worked a lot on, both in how I deliver and how the company I'm currently working for, Cervello, delivers as a whole. And what I've seen over the past 5 years is when you're going in to work on an Anaplan project, it opens up a couple of different things. It opens up kind of company politics a little bit. It opens up data quality issues. It opens up definitions of hierarchies and the kind of different definitions that folks have in different groups. So one thing I've found that's really important is like measure twice, cut once. And even though you're going in there for a specific purpose that's related to the SOW, I think there's a due diligence that consulting firms have to really do what's in the best interest of the client and for their future. So, for example, if you're going to build a house somewhere and you go work with your contractor and the lot is just like not leveled and there's some water issues nearby, they're going to work with you to make sure that you don't build the house tilted and that you're not building it too close to that water. So I think sometimes when we go in there and we find those data or hierarchy kind of conflicts, we need to not just hold everyone accountable to what was written in the SOW, but also reassess after you're in there, you're talking with folks. Because a lot of times the external consultants are the ones that are able to bring those issues up to leadership. And that's when they're going to listen. So that I think is one area that's just super, super important because if you just go in there and execute on the SOW's mission, but you're really leaving some things there that aren't great, they might require a lot of maintenance, they might not be super flexible, that value is only going to last so long.
That makes sense. What I'm hearing and thinking about as I'm listening to you talk is just being able to almost, like, set the SOW aside, set your agenda aside, and meet the client where they are. You
Hmm.
have an idea of what you're walking into, but you don't know what you don't know until you get in
Exactly.
there and you see what you're looking at. And if your long-term goal is to always leave a client in a position of strength, then you have to address some of those foundational fundamental issues if you think it's gonna impact your ability to deliver on that SOW, and it requires, like, honestly, it's more work for you. It's
Hmm.
more work as a consultant, it's harder, it's more hours, it's more difficult conversations to be able to do that, but when you can approach it from the perspective of, "I have your best interest in mind, and here's why. Given this new information, we're gonna see long-term challenges here, and you're probably not gonna get the ROI that you're looking for immediately. So we have to address these challenges." I think that makes a ton of sense. I know one of the other things that you're passionate about, kind of along the same vein, is when it comes to transformation, doing the right thing when no one's looking. So, given what you just said, what does it look like to do the right thing when no one's looking?
Yeah, so I think it almost works as like a double click into the first one. Say you're working with a customer and some of the reporting requirements are discussing the data being shown in a certain hierarchy or a certain view. And when you're looking at the data, the mapping that you need to get to that view is something that's inconsistent or not filled in properly all the time. You might need to kind of say pause, how is that mapping currently filled out? Why isn't it consistent? And what do we need to do process wise with the customer to make that mapping more consistent? So it's kind of we could just build that report and kind of keep moving forward with the project and then we say okay that's a manual mapping that needs to get filled out, but I think the next step is kind of driving those like process changes that are going to facilitate the mission that you're trying to execute on related to the SOW. Another one is when folks are implementing Anaplan, some have to start with a CSV upload when they're loading their data or their hierarchies, but most customers want to move towards some type of automation. So they're trying to put this model in place, but they don't want to incur these manual tasks that need to happen. So also talking with them about kind of an ETL tool, and do they have one in house? Are they exploring one? Is there a future phase where that type of work's going to be done? Because the whole idea around the Anaplan is to make things allow companies to plan quicker, more efficiently, etc. If we're putting in a great Anaplan model, but there's 10 uploads that someone needs to do, kind of hurts that value case a bit.
That makes a ton of sense. I was thinking about this phrase Ryan DeBeal shared with us on a prior episode, which is pathological curiosity. You talked about, you can just kind of build the report and move on to the next thing, but being willing to, when you see a piece missing, being able to ask why is that missing, and having that as a consultant, that pathological curiosity to keep digging in and dig deeper, because like you said, you're laying a foundation. And what do you have to do when you're building a home? You used that metaphor earlier. You got to dig, you got to
Yep.
dig to build a home. That's got to go in the ground. And so I love that. I think that's awesome. How do you help? Maybe I know you're a manager at Cervello now. How do you help other consultants underneath you or that you're managing on a project kind of shift into this mindset as well?
Yeah, so I think I'd say there's a couple ways. One, it kind of relates to just the way in which we go about building the solution. So keep it simple and complicate when necessary. And that also relates to what we're leaving behind. So oftentimes I've seen kind of documentation that folks leave behind with customers. One thing I try to do is basically get rid of that documentation. So thinking about model maintenance or forecast cycle maintenance, can we build checklists into the app that basically take away any manual documentation that's held offline? And the other piece I'd say is when something doesn't seem quite right, bring it up. Don't be scared that you might not know what's going on or you might not have the answer. If something doesn't seem quite right process wise, or you're thinking, ooh, this is going to be a tough spot to maintain, bring it up. And on that project, the kind of culture we need to set is like open and honest communication, not kind of, oh, this doesn't seem right. I don't feel comfortable airing this. Obviously, we need to be careful what meetings we air things on with the customer, but especially that internal team being comfortable to raise your hand if something doesn't seem quite right.
You made a comment there where you kind of asked the question of what are we leaving behind, right? And getting rid of anything outside of the application documentation, building in checklists. What I heard there is self-service,
Hmm.
teaching the client to self-serve in the tool after you're gone, and you have to set it up that way while you're there. A good friend and mentor of mine at one of my old companies that I worked for, in a Fortune 250 financial services company, she used to say that her goal was always to make herself replaceable.
Hmm.
That's kind of a mindset shift for people. A lot, I know there's a lot of folks, especially in a corporate setting, that feel like I need to protect my knowledge and make myself irreplaceable, and I keep my job secure by holding my knowledge in, and being the only person in the organization who can do things, but that actually limits you in your career growth, because you become, the, for lack of a better term, Anaplan person. You're the one who knows how to build Anaplan, and that's all you do. You're not teaching others or reproducing your skill sets, helping others self-serve. Then you end up kind of siloed into Anaplan. Whereas if you are teaching people how to build well, teaching people how to use the tool effectively, and they can do it without you, it frees you up to do more higher ROI activities. And that's a longer term, it's a different career trajectory in the long run when we try to make ourselves replaceable. So I love that. Love that a lot. It's incredible insight. Man, next question for you would just be, what are, as you've gone into projects and you've seen a lot of transformation, what is maybe a commonly held belief about EPM transformation that you maybe see at a customer, or with more inexperienced consultants that you passionately disagree with, and why?
Yeah, I think I would say my biggest one that I passionately disagree with is people want to get into build. Customers want, when are we starting build, right?
Yeah.
When am I going to see the P&L? When am I going to see that territory and quota planning section? It's it's really spending that upfront time, and it goes against agile a little bit. I think
Mhm.
I think agile delivery is definitely a good thing,
Yeah.
but I disagree with kind of full agile. I like a starting point of a sort of like waterfall in the beginning a little bit to get everyone aligned on the process, the data, the dimensions, the reports, the versioning approach, all that type of stuff. And then in the sprints, you can become more agile when things come up to an extent, but then there needs to be a backlog. So going into a project and having like 1 week to do kind of more detailed discovery, that's not enough time, especially as Anaplan is evolving at customers where they're not just doing one model. There's 3, 4 things that need to hang together. And now we need to think about, there's probably other tools outside of Anaplan that are involved in this process. There's probably a reporting tool. There's sometimes an ETL tool. So we need to think about the solution holistically, and being too agile can draw away from that because you just get into that narrow focus of building this model, but you haven't thought about, oh, do they have Tableau or Power BI, and how are we going to interact with that? So I think it's getting too much into the build too quickly, and being overly agile.
Mm. That's good. So it sounds like you want to slow things down at the beginning to be able to view the client in a more holistic way. Is that fair?
Yep. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I want the solution as a whole, and sometimes it is just Anaplan, but a lot of the larger clients, there's a suite of
Right.
technology involved and a lot of different users across those different suites, and we need to make sure the versioning approach makes sense, like what's gonna stay in Anaplan, what's gonna be available in these reporting tools, what time horizons are available in Anaplan, because we don't wanna store a whole bunch of, time series in the calculation engine. So it's not the most popular thing to do, but I think slowing down in the beginning, still working very hard. In fact, I think almost working harder. It's a different part of the brain to use than when you're in build and test mode. But yeah, slow down in the beginning. Don't jump right into Anaplan, and you're going to have more value in the long term. And you're going to build the right things.
Mm. That makes a lot of sense. One of the other things you said there too was a lot of times that sounds like it's sometimes driven by a customer. Customers like, we just, pull the trigger on this tool. When can I see the P&L? When can I see the build out? How do you help, especially like a higher level executive sponsor, or whoever it might be that's running it at the customer? How do you help them slow down? What does
Yeah.
that
So
conversation look like?
I I'd say what I try to do is list out the deliverables that we need to agree on before we start the build, and actually list those out. Don't just say, "Oh, we need to talk about the process, we need to talk about this." List out the key documents that I think we need in order to start build, and tell them the purpose of each document, and then in their head they're going to say, "Whoa, yeah, we definitely need to talk about all those things before we start." I don't know how we would do that in 1 week. So being, I'd say, clear with them on exactly what you're going to collect and the purpose of it. And they will very quickly say, yes, this makes sense. This is valuable use of our time.
So you said you can't do it in a week usually.
Hmm.
What's the ideal time frame for real in-depth discovery done the right way with a customer who's like, "Yes, I see the value in what you're asking for. Let's go get it all."
Yep. I'd say it depends for sure, but I will give a specific answer. If the So the customers we're working with have regular day jobs, right? They can't always allocate their full time to these types of meetings. So if they are able to allocate full time, we could probably do it in like 2.5 weeks. If they're not, and they're only able to allocate a certain amount of time, sometimes that can extend to 4 to 5 weeks. So I think if we have full attention of everyone, 2 to 2.5, if we are going to kind of extend the time, but keep the total hours spent the same, we would just go to 50% and then basically double that. So go to like 4 to 6 weeks.
Mm, that's good. You know, it because even think about this. I think about this with our clients. Sometimes a different line of work, but similar space, obviously. And it amazes me sometimes how short sighted
Hmm.
folks can be. Where it's like, well, just build the P&L, just find the person, whatever it is, and it's like, well, hold on a second. We need to actually slow down. We have to slow down in order to speed up. You know,
Exactly.
and we've even seen it with candidates before in terms of just attitudes from clients, and we have to constantly reframe their perspective. Like, well, if you can't start in March, you might as well not even start this year. And it's like, I think we're
Yeah.
missing the purpose of what Anaplan is if that's our mentality. If
Yep.
it's just show me the P&L, like we're missing the majority of why we bought the tool. So no, I love that. I think it's great. So one more question for you before we transition kind of more to just the purpose side of things when it comes to career stuff. But talk to me about any early career advice you would give to someone who's just now getting into this space. What would you tell them?
I would say for someone just getting into the space, you I think most people are visual learners, even if they say that they're not. One thing I did when I hear people talk, I am okay at conceptualizing what they're saying. But when we talk about these really complicated planning processes, oftentimes I'd say try to visualize things. We grew up as kids kind of drawing and being very creative and coloring books, etc. Visualize it. So when you're on calls with clients, you'll see a more experienced consultant leading it and playing back what the customer has said. In your notebook, just kind of draw out what you think they're saying. And until you get into that spot where you're running those calls, kind of practice playing back what someone's saying to you more and more often. And we're not in person as much anymore, but I used to be a big whiteboard person. Even when I was at Ernst and Young and Pratt and Whitney earlier on in my career, it was kind of funny because they people would say, "Okay, wait, when's Brett gonna go and try and draw something on the whiteboard?" And when you're early in your career, you might be kind of nervous to do that. But I said, in order for me to understand this well, I want to draw it out. So that's a piece of advice that I would give to people is try to visualize and play back what you're hearing.
That's good. I mean, it's a simple thing of write it down, draw the picture, get the blueprint in place, and make sure everyone's on the same page, and listen actively. I heard a lot of repeat back what you're
Mhm.
hearing them say, and that's just active listening. Which again, to me, that is the skill set that enables someone to do everything that we've talked about on this episode, which is laying the right foundation, being able to get really clear on what it is we're actually building and why, meeting the customer where they are and leaving them with a solution that they can truly self-serve, and it's gonna guide them to ultimately what they're looking for. Man, Brett, this has been just a ton of incredible insights. I'll get you out of here on a couple of questions. The first is this: fast forward to the end of your career, and tell me, what kind of impact do you want to have?
Yeah, I want to. So I started off my career obviously being like an individual contributor, and at Cervello, I really honed my skills of bringing other folks up to speed. I want to be recognized in my career as kind of impacting a lot of other people's careers and being that kind of ramp for their career. So when they've interacted with me, I've kind of improved how they or basically improved their career trajectory. And they look back on those like people relationships in my career. I obviously want to leave great solutions behind, but I can only build so many solutions. If I can get other people kind of juiced up with those skills that I've developed, then we're going to be able to have a much more wide breadth of solutions that have been delivered that are functioning and adding value. So I'd say just being a positive impact on other people's careers.
It's a great answer. Be a ramp. Be a ramp for other people. I love it. Next question for you. What is a big, hairy, audacious goal that you are going after right now? Doesn't have to be professional. It can be. It could be personal. What's kind of in your line of sight right now?
Yep. So I played a lot of tennis growing up. I wanted to play basketball, but I was pretty short growing up. Now I'm 6'2", so kind of happened a little bit too late. But played competitive tennis, played Division I tennis at Quinnipiac. I always had a two-hand backhand, also because I was a little bit smaller. But my favorite player was always Roger Federer, so he had a beautiful one-hand backhand. I play tennis now once a week, and I've changed over to a one-hand backhand, and I want to get to the level that I used to play at, but with a one-hand backhand. So it's pretty difficult, I've found, but I want to get back to that like 5.0 USTA level of tennis with the one-handed backhand.
All right. I love it. That's awesome. It's cool that you are it's cool you're in a sport that you can still play at a
Yep.
high level. I was a college wrestler and man, I coach a little bit, but every time I have to go out and wrestle, I'm just like real in a high school room, I'm just like, "Whew, I can't do this anymore."
Yeah, it's tough. I also do basketball. So I do tennis on Tuesday night, basketball on Thursday night. So I'm still getting out there. I'm 32 now. So still,
Still getting out there, still
yep,
kicking.
exactly.
That's good. That's good, man. Just keep kicking, right? I love it. I love it. Well, hey, Brett, thanks for being on the show. If people wanted to reach out to you to continue the conversation, where can they contact you?
Yeah, LinkedIn, post on there a good amount. I'm usually on there a couple times a week. Definitely reach out if you have questions. I also went from kind of that accounting world into FP&A and then into EPM. So I did the whole CPA route there. So pivoting into EPM, I can definitely talk through that or anything else folks want to chat on.
That's awesome. Brett, thanks for coming on the show.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Oh yeah.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Wherever you're consuming this, if it's YouTube, if it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, we appreciate you. Make sure you're subscribed. We have a lot more amazing guests on the way, a lot more great content. We're doing our best to bring you value and have fun while we do it. We really want this to be a career advantage listening to this show, and we want you to enjoy it. So it means a lot. Make sure you're subscribed for what's to come. And also, if you're up for it, it would mean a lot if you leave us a like, a comment, a rating, a review, whatever platform you're on. That really helps, and it gets us fired up when we see those. So I appreciate you guys. Find us on LinkedIn. I'm Blake Bozarth, my co-host Chad Pyke with a Y. Would love to connect with you there. Have an awesome day. See you next time. Peace.